Hello and welcome back to our weekly Fuel Arts, Art and Tech webinars online series. My name is Denis Belkevich. I'm the co-founder and general partner in Fuel Arts, and with me is Sonia Stubblebine, project manager at Fuel Arts. So today will be your co-host, and also starting today for the next 12 weeks, our webinars will focus on the diversity of the Tezos ecosystem. So these webinars will introduce you to the managers, curators, founders, artists, and technical experts working to develop the number one blockchain for the arts, which is obviously Tezos. In the same 12 weeks, we'll be working with the startups of our first batch of the Fuel Arts and Tezos accelerator. Hope we'll announce you the young companies enrolled soon. So now I'm happy to speak more about the partners of this batch. So I'm at a global and New York-based investment firm focused on public and private companies. Educate Me, a startup from Ukraine, a platform that gathers live sessions, lessons, content, and assignments for young learners in a single place. Unstoppable Domains, one of the most talked about startups of 2022, is an infrastructural partner of the batch. They will supply the selected startups with the domain infrastructure. Radio Button, our tech partner of Fuel Arts from Germany, they are successfully developing the most ambitious and scalable projects. Tezos Art Management is a team of producers and strategists who are managing international art projects and delivering PR services. Happy to present our media partner, Metaverse Post. They are supplying the market with the hottest Web3 news. And the last four partners are represented by our mentors of the upcoming Fuel Arts and Tezos accelerator, who will mentor the selector startups. So Blockchain Art, trustworthy network for the art world, where one can discover, buy, and sell digital artworks online. Its founder, Christina Steinbrecher Fund, will be working on finding the market fit in the art and Web3. So Bull Perks, a decentralized VC and multi-chain launchpad focused on gamify, represented by its founder, Konstantin Kogan. He will be responsible for gamify and metaverse mentorship. ArtPay, a French startup which provides elegant financial and technology tools for the global art market, represented by Natasha Rotman-Letourneur, the former head of sales at ArtNet and Collectrum. So she will be responsible for go-to-market strategy. And Artcryption, Vandana Taksali. Yes, this is a platform to sell, protect, and share creative assets and IP online. Vandana will be mentoring about NFT legal. So our first dive into the Tezos ecosystem, we decided to start with art, which unites us all. So that's why we invited Valérie Whitacre, head of art at Trilitech. Hi, Valérie.
Hi, Valérie. Hi. Oh, you're on mute, Valérie.
Oh, sorry. I'll try to keep myself on mute in between, but hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. We know that you have spent over a decade leading sales and business development private galleries in London, and also you have a master's degree in contemporary art and globalization at Courtauld Institute of Art. So you have the art background. So Tezos have chosen the right person to lead the art department.
That's very kind of you to say. I kind of look back on you mentioning my master's degree, and there are parts about the globalization aspect I would rather forget from an academic sense, but which seem really appropriate now.
Yeah, so let's start with our questions. We have plenty of them. First, we ask about the background. So our first question is, how did you start your career in art, and when did it shift towards the intersection of art and technology?
So I started my art career in 2008, just after graduating. Being in London, a hub for art, a center for artistic expression, but also for commercialization. and some of the highest level global institutions as well. There was no shortage of networking opportunities. And I managed to meet some quite prominent collectors at the time, and they were collectors of photography. I really focused most of my career on selling photographs and engaging with the medium and all that was very specific about it. My first encounter with blockchain technology really was around the issue of authentication. I've always found certificates of authenticity on paper to be quite a dubious and imperfect system of authentication, both for photographs as well as for other forms of art. For anyone who's visited exhibitions where they show you the back of frames of painting, I mean, you have all sorts of different provenance aspects, not just the artist's signature, but very often numbers of sales or of collections or of gallery codes, which have become famous. And those all are really part of the actual physical object. Whereas with certificates of authenticity, you have this separate piece of paper that very much can get separated from the artwork, of course. And that was really the beginnings of a very short but very deep rabbit hole into what the technology can provide for art, both as a tool but also as a new medium that shares so much with the history of photography, as an infinitely reproducible medium, as a medium that has its own market structures that succeed because of tried and tested results, where a medium that has essentially come out of a democratized sense of craft and of technology, but which has been snubbed by the contemporary art market for a very long time. And you have now this distinction of contemporary artists who use cameras versus photographers. And I find the parallels to be, well, I'm impassioned by them. I'm moved by the parallels in terms of my existing career. And certainly when it comes to meeting some of the creators that work within the Tezos ecosystem and who mint on Tezos, whether they be generative artists or poets or figurative artists or photographers, the debate is even more rich and cultivated. So that intersection of technology came out of one very practical need for a tool, but developed into a sense of part of the overall philosophical, political, and aesthetic conversation around art. And so I'm really, really privileged to be working with some of the leading creators in the ecosystem, tool builders as well, and then of course my team, who many of you will meet along the way.
Absolutely, thank you. And we also would love to know more about your path with Tezos. How did you start working with Tezos and when did it happen?
I joined the Tezos ecosystem relatively recently, May of last year, of 2020, gosh, it's 2022. I mean, really my first jolt into what the meaning and the impact of my role would be was when I first met some of the creators in June of last year at Art Basel, where the Tezos Foundation had sponsored a booth and an overall partnership with the art fair. It really clarified my mission, not just from a strategic perspective, but from it really providing me the insight to be able to take what I believe to be one sort of strategy, but really customizing it to an incredibly different audience. But also, I mean, I think it's worth saying that the main reason that Head of Art exists within the Tezos ecosystem is the creators that started to build upon the blockchain organically. I mean, I don't think there's anyone within the ecosystem that doesn't think that's true. So my journey came out of this passion, this desire to kind of create change, recognizing Tezos as the ecosystem for that. After some happy accidents of conversations with recruiters who I think thought I would be a good match. But on a less practical sense, really meeting with this unique audience and realizing the vision ahead. So that's still a journey that I think will evolve and continues in a really exciting way. But it's been an absolute dream working with developers for the first time as well, and really learning a completely new way of thinking, and being able to combine that with my my strategic knowledge and commercial knowledge, but also kind of getting, for the first time in many years, to deep dive back into the aesthetics with a completely new lens.
Thank you, Valerie. Today, numerous blockchain ecosystems try to develop in the arts. So what is the Tezos ecosystem's motivation to become a leading blockchain for art?
I mean, I would say, again, I think it's the creators who are building on it and the tools that I see coming out of that inspiration. Without speaking for the community, because I can't, I think it would be a valid assessment to say that the Tezos community is uniquely positioned as a creator community, is a true creator economy that is not necessarily about, or at least doesn't have as its principal core value speculation or commercialization. Each project very often has a sincere motive behind it, and if not strictly from that perspective, from the sort of drive to move art into a new movement. I think every movement in art has been, catalyzed in some way by either political change. Certainly, the world wars have impacted how we perceive the world around us and what kind of artistic expression has come out of it. And I think really the foundation, without speaking for them, it really recognizes that this is an incredible moment in art history, and that there are creators working in the ecosystem that warrant that drive from the entities and from the arts vertical team to continue that mission forward.
We would also love to ask you more about startups, obviously, because that's what we want to focus here on. And I'd like to ask you, what successful art startups can you name in Tezos ecosystem?
I mean, there's some really obvious ones that, you walk into any room of sort of contemporary creatives who are engaged with blockchain who will recognize whether it's the marketplaces, Object, Taya, the history of Hikignunk, FX Hash, DNS is a music platform, the Verse. I'm going to be missing some, and so I won't continue. I'll just admit apologies to those who have not mentioned. But separate to marketplaces, there are wallets that have enabled those marketplaces to flourish and enabled for these live minting experience at Art Basel. From a purely selfish perspective, with my background in photography and having come to this through authentication, I think tools like Artea are incredibly important. I think tools which facilitate certain ease of use and markets, such as Minted, are also really, really incredible. And then also creative studios. I think the Pirates Labs project is a really interesting one. And one that constantly surprises me, which is what you really want from a studio like that. And I'm really pleased to say that, as I continue my journey looking through a whole bunch of different applications, that I'm seeing a lot more about content creativity. I'm seeing a lot more about social networks that accommodate different ways of thinking. I think there's a wonderful uniqueness to specific creators that don't fit within either current legacy art models or the existing NFT minting strategy, which involves so much self-marketing and so much exposure and so much pressure to be on constantly. It's certainly something I'm still working on. But seeing platforms that accommodate different complexities and sort of neural programming and understanding, or having not having the ability to hear or to speak. And I think there's a lot to be said for specific startups that cater to different audiences that deserve the right and the ability to easily engage within this ecosystem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Not to mention that in about 12 weeks, the Tezos art ecosystem should receive 10 more startups focused on art and tech. Let's move from digital art to more brick and mortar cases. Art Basel. So since December 21, Tezos has been the official blockchain partner of the Art Basel Fair. So why did the Tezos Foundation decide to have a physical booth at the fair, and what goals were achieved by that?
I mean, I think that the relationship between the Tezos ecosystem and the Art Basel Fair came out of an extremely important moment in time where the legacy art world and its commercial leaders, right? And we can't forget, Art Basel is not a cultural festival. It's an art fair. It's a place where, they're meant to drive trade and commerce. Where a fair like that recognized that they couldn't turn their back on this evolving technology and this evolving market, right? Which, I hate to dumb it down because it really was an unprecedented historical moment where any sort of art institution had the foresight to realize that they had to change. And for the Tezos ecosystem to recognize also that this was an opportunity to showcase creators that would otherwise never have this opportunity, but perhaps I would say maybe more creatively, as it's a little bit, one goes to these fairs expecting to see artwork, right? But I think more creative vision that the ecosystem really wanted to put forward was, let's showcase what you can do. Let's showcase utility and gameplay and gifting. I mean, I don't ever remember going to a fair where I got something for free that I hadn't somewhat already paid for. And so it was really a matter less of branding and exposure for the creators and more about bridging the gap between the discussion of art as commerce and the function of art fairs, and really what it means to be a cultural partner. This is a hugely, kind of historical pattern where commercial entities or significant luxury partners will partner with an art institution as some sort of legitimizing factor. But the Tezos Foundation is not an oil company, and it's not a luxury firm, and it's not a watchmaker necessarily. It has a very specific mandate, which doesn't really overlap with any of those missions. So this was really an opportunity for a completely different type of partner to come and showcase an art movement that hadn't been showcased before. I think separate to that, I have to make a shout out to all of the hard work that the creators did, because it's not as if the Tezos Foundation came equipped at the onset with the production studio values or the ideas necessarily of what to put forward in a moment like that or in a partnership like that. And the creators put in an absolute ton of work to make that a success, as did many other partners, but certainly the artists were the primary driver in that. So as much as I think we can give credit certainly to the Tezos Foundation for entering into that partnership for all the right reasons and with a historical imperative in mind, certainly there was a lot of hard work from the individuals, and I wouldn't want to forget that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I also want to know, what is your perspective? Because as I remember, the Tezos exhibition was there in 2021 and 2022. Environment was completely different with NFT boom in 2021 and then kind of bear market in 2022. So what was the audience reaction? Was it somehow different from one time to another?
I think there's two factors. One is that, yes, I mean, 100%, whilst I was not at the Tezos exhibition in 2021, my understanding, I have it on good authority, I should say, that the attention to the exhibition to NFTs in general within the art community at that moment in time was much more vibrant than it was last year. But part of that is because the NFT crypto art-based communities, digital art communities working on the blockchain found their own spaces in Miami Art Week. They found their own venues. They hosted their own events. Not to isolate themselves from the traditional art market or the legacy creators, but more to celebrate what they had achieved in the whole year before, despite the bear market. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, where of course there was a little bit of I would say, a damper on the environment. But equally, leaving the Art Basel Fair and seeing all the activity about what was going on was, and knowing that came out of all of that hard work the 12 months before, starting with Art Basel 2021, I think is a much better testament to what we have to look forward to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie, we know that apart from digital art pavilions at Art Basel, the Tezos Foundation supported educational sessions as part of Tezos talks or Tezos conversations. So could you please tell us more about this educational initiative?
Yeah, I mean, the panels were part of the partnership. They were curated by several different individuals from the ecosystem, most notably Diane Drubet, and then also several individuals from the Blockhouse studio. And very much, I think if one were to go to, and one can, they're all live, can go to the Tezos.com website and actually look at all of the different panels and to see how they grew over time and the types of people that were involved in the conversation. It's a curious experiment, so I'd encourage all of the startups and anyone listening to this to certainly do it. If I'm addressing what was really the impact of that, I think the impact came from, of course, the venue, right? But again, I mean, Art Basel is a commercial organization. Its job is not to educate. So for there to be packed out audiences and for there to be tens of thousands of views for some of these videos from 2021 onwards, is also a testament to the demand for the education around NFTs, around crypto art, around blockchain technology. And I think what started out as a detail in a document and a partnership and a strategy really became almost its own tour de force of engagement. Certainly by the time we got to Paris Plus, which was the first ever Art Basel Paris Fair last year, there was finally someone from the Art Basel team joining the talk. And it might seem funny that they hadn't joined before, but it took that momentum to get that engagement and to get that particular fair director, Vincenzo, who's delightful, to join that panel. And he said something really interesting that I think is really a testament to all of that hard work that came out of those educational panels, but also hard work from others in the ecosystem that are driving residencies and other sort of educational platforms across the board, which is that he said that the contemporary art world is ready to see a crypto native artist, a blockchain native artist, create something that's so provocative, it changes the art world completely. And that's when you're going to start to see really powerful NFT-based art representation within the selling part of the fair. And he made, the astute sort of comparison that he made was one of contemporary art's most sort of controversial pieces of an upside down bicycle wheel on a stool. And, for someone from an institute like Art Basel, or an organization, I should say, like Art Basel, again, whose primary motivation is a commercial one, to go back into the history and the annals of art history and moments when museums and institutions for culture have been utterly shaken to their core, and to say that the contemporary art world is ready for crypto art to do that, I think that's just, I mean, he's right, but I think it's more important that these panels have led up to that moment.
I also wanted to ask you more about other partnerships, for example, partnership with Deloitte. I remember that Tezos partnered with Deloitte for Art and Finance Conference in Vatican. I also wanted to know more about this partnership and why they actually chose Deloitte.
Well, I'd prefer to say that Deloitte chose us, but I guess there's a debate around that. Our partners at Nomadic Labs, who take care of France and Benelux, had for a long time been speaking to the Deloitte Art and Finance team based in Luxembourg, and the decision to come together at a moment of not just education but debate, where we're not just doing panels with Q&A or a session like this, which is a little bit more one way. to come together in a room and really be able to kind of flex concerns, to be able to address both regulatory initiatives as well as financial ones, commercial as well as charitable, I think really expanded on the desire of this community to really build tools with impact and to not ignore real world systems, right? I mean, the Web3 movement is, I think that the word in French is bouleversant. I mean, it's overwhelming. And to a certain extent, it can feel quite alienating to those who are very set in systems. Someone in one of the talks was saying just how much it took for them to even really discuss blockchain, because they didn't have the time or the headspace to really go through the motions of understanding the Web3 movement, and because it's so connected, of course. So that particular moment in time where Deloitte Art and Finance and the Tezos Foundation linked up to try and solve some of that discussion, that was out of a spirit of collaboration, and I really hope it was impactful, certainly in the moment. And of course, we're still very much in touch with the Deloitte partners very regularly about further initiatives on reporting and on making sure that their audience also has a resource in the Tezos ecosystem to be able to learn not just about art and finance, but about the value of Web3 and blockchain technology and what and the Tezos blockchain in particular has to give for all of their stakeholders.
Thank you, Valerie. You've mentioned two words. You've mentioned Web3 and you've mentioned debate. So let's add a bit of debate to our conversation. In your opinion, is it easy for an art tech startups to shift from Web 2 to Web 3 nowadays? And if to be more exact, what challenges do art tech founders face with during this process, and how can the Tezos ecosystem support them in this journey?
I mean, I would say that from the get-go, the art world is a walled garden. It has lots of crystal palaces and glass ceilings. I think coming from the art world, trying to sit in a room with developers felt incredibly intimidating. Though I'm glad to say that my colleagues at Trilitech have welcomed me with open arms and helped me feel much more comfortable in those discussions. But I would say that there's a pretty deep moat between those two worlds in particular. It's not like you can, oh, I was in banking and I decided to learn, how to run a tech startup, right? If you're looking at both worlds, you're kind of going to have to do a little bit of an Alice through the looking glass moment, where everything is in reverse and everything is upside down. So I really do think it's going to be challenging for anyone who doesn't have already a foot in both ponds in some way. But I don't think that it's an impossible task. And in fact, I think the biggest question that any art tech startup needs to kind of ask themselves is, has this already been solved? And in the context of this particular discussion, does it really need blockchain or not? Right? And sometimes people are very excited to include blockchain in a technology, but it might actually be, certainly not within this accelerator program. I mean, I know we've seen some incredible startups where blockchain is going to be absolutely relevant, but on a larger scale, is it necessary or is it valuable? And I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle that some people who are trying to enter this art and tech space really have to grapple with. And that might involve a little bit more education, some self-education, but a lot more networking to answer that question. And then on the flip side, in regards to your question around how can the Tezos ecosystem help, how can we deliver? We have a system already in place with it that's direct to our ecosystem called the Web3 Arts and Culture Lab, which is run by Jan Ruben in Berlin, the cohort of which this time around includes some major museums, cultural institutions, and real thought leaders who recognize and who kind of fess up to the fact that they know one space, but they don't know the other. And I think it's going to take a lot of voluntary initiative. But I would say that if you're willing to come to the table and admit what you don't know and ask for what you need, the Tezos ecosystem is the perfect place to find how to fill those gaps.
Thank you. We also have a comment from the audience, a question from the audience. Can we put it on the screen?
Yeah, sure. One sec.
Yeah, so we have a question about, here it is. So Valerie, what would be your tips for ArtTech startup to enter this community? What would you recommend?
I think there's a couple of different avenues depending on one's age and comfort level. I would say that if you reach out to almost any creator or tech startup on Twitter who's already operating in the Tezos ecosystem, you're likely to get an answer. As I feel like the generosity of the people operating on this ecosystem is not to be scoffed at. And as long as everyone comes in with a collaborative attitude, I think even people just exploring certain ideas are going to get a lot of help and direction from people who have already built on Tezos and worked within the ecosystem. On a more official sense, I mean, this programs like Web3 Arts and Culture Lab, residencies that are available through things like vertical crypto art, visiting exhibitions, coming to talks that our various ecosystem partners are on and asking the questions that you feel are relevant. Those are some other avenues. And then, I mean, there's just infinite numbers of volunteers online who have also created content, some of which we don't even know about until it's published. I mean, I recently was shared a book that was just published by a member of the community on Tezos NFTs in the marketplace, and we had no idea that was coming. So it might seem like a really intimidating landscape, but I would say assess what it is that you want to learn, know how best you work in terms of learning, whether it's audio or visual, or whether it's asking direct questions and connecting to people one-on-one, or any number of other ways in which one learns best. And then there will be a clear path after you've made that assessment.
Thank you. I think that was very valuable for everyone who's been watching us right now. Yeah, so actually the last question that we had prepared with Dennis actually would be about art vertical team in Tezos ecosystem. Want to know what's in the plans regarding tech development and art creation in the coming years?
I mean, that is it's an incredibly challenging question, because as everyone likely here knows, the landscape has changed drastically in the past 6 months. But I think that there's also a lot more clarity around what we aspire to when it comes to the creators and the marketplaces and wallets and all of the different tech startups building on Tezos. And that's really the vision of success that we have is really activity, right? It's not just having one person see one artist and decide, oh yeah, okay, that's the NFT that I've collected. Or, oh yeah, that's the charity I donated to through an NFT project. Or, oh yeah, I went to one gallery exhibition, or I went to one museum exhibition that showcased the history of computational art. It's really to make these experiences part of daily life. And that's not to say that one needs to infect people's homes with art and technology, but really to make sure that there's this year a focus on making sure that everyone is welcome, and that those who have created valuable experiences, valuable tools, incredible artwork are not shunned by those who don't understand the technology either. So I think, the Tezos ecosystem and its creator community are already incredibly rich, incredibly vibrant. They differentiate the Tezos ecosystem from other blockchain ecosystems. But specifically for the art vertical, it's really about taking that next step and focusing less on potentially awareness and more about welcoming new users, engaging new users, and also discovering new ways of solving problems. I think that's what an accelerator like this is going to really bring to light, is not just solutions, but expansions on existing solutions that haven't yet been imagined. So that, I think, is without speaking for every single member of my team or any one of the other companies or startups or projects on Tezos, I think that I can confidently say that that's at least part of everyone's vision for 2023.
Thank you, Valerie. We have another question from the audience.
Right, so we have a question from Olena. Just want to ask you for a recommendation for artists just starting their career in Web3.
It's funny that Olena, that you asked that question, because someone yesterday at a talk I was at asked me the reverse question. They asked me the traditional art world question, saying, "Oh, I do painting and I do drawing. How do I get into a gallery?" And I would say that the answer that I gave him and the answer I'm about to give you are polar opposite. I would suggest explore your favorite artists, collect, learn how they communicate, learn what platforms you enjoy, study it, enjoy it, go along for the ride. And then when you're ready, showcase. But showcase with the same generosity and the same collaborative spirit that you will have seen along your collecting journey. And I don't mean collecting at hundreds of dollars of value. I mean, going to a project that might raise charity for, 10 Tez, or engaging with someone on Twitter and asking them how they made their project and sharing your work with them and asking their opinion about it. Because that's not at all how the traditional art world operates. But after many months of having to sort of rip off a bit my commercial art world scaffolding, I've been astonished by the generosity of the ecosystem and the ability for artists to progress with that welcoming attitude, with that spirit that comes from the Web3 movement itself, and to really just have great success along the way. Not to mention a lot of fun, which the traditional art world can sometimes not be. So yeah, I mean, it seems a little bit formulaic. It seems maybe a bit simple. But I can assure you that it's an essential part of the fulfilling experience that one would have as a creator in the Tezos ecosystem.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I also want to ask you.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Dennis. Sorry. I also want to ask you for a definition of Web3. I know that we've been touching it in different webinars, and we often ask our guests from different sectors what they think of Web3 and how they can actually give a definition, because there are still many different definitions towards this term.
I mean, the way that I would position it to someone who has yet to hear of it, not someone who's experienced and who likely has a very strong opinion about what it stands for, is really that it's a new peer-to-peer network. It does rely on simple internet technology, but as someone who remembers the America Online AOL dial-up sound and who had her first, crappy email address at the age of 6 or 7, it's less about research or one-way communication, and it's less about social and outward positioning and branding, and it's much more about what networks can achieve together. Not always purely collaboratively, but certainly in a connected way that is much more decentralized, that does not rely on current systems of siloed communication, or the walled gardens that I mentioned that the traditional art world is. It's less about VIP passes, and it's much more about what we can learn together to create communal outputs.
Thank you, Valerie. I mean, we're happy for the Tezos ecosystem that they have you as a head of art. I mean, a person whose answers are full, not only with information, but with passion towards what you are talking about. So thank you again. And Oh, sorry, we have
Yeah, I think there's one more question.
one more
Right,
question.
we have one
Good.
more question. Yeah, so what niches in Web3 in the field of art are most in demand now, from your point of view?
I mean, I think we can celebrate that generative art has made a huge dent, not just in the Tezos ecosystem or in other blockchain ecosystems, but also now in traditional spheres. A huge shout out to the generative artist who recently last month sold at an auction, or a sale rather, called Cure 3, raising money for Parkinson's. And in 2.5 hours raised something like $250,000 for the charity, when the rest of the sale of high-end contemporary artists' work was still a bit lagging. I mean, it was a 5-day sale, I should say. So that aside, and also that having their best month. I think generative art is a place to really explore where that new medium of art on the chain. But also, I would suggest that alternative forms of creation are now also really driving a new path. The idea of collecting poetry, music, performance, the idea of those art forms colliding as well, not just visual forms of poetry, but spoken word. I mean, what is music if not spoken poetry, right? I think there's going to be, in the next year or two, a flourishing new dynamic of what we call art. I think it's going to be a much richer landscape than it was 10 years ago, than it was 2 years ago, or even than what it was 6 months ago. So I hope that's helpful. Basically, don't put a limitation on it.
That you said we've recently had a question about the, let's say, digital artistic career. Recently, I mean, yesterday you said you had a question about physical artistic career, but now we have question about the mixed artistic career. Let me show it, please. Yes. So here in Mexico City, there is a connection between the emergent fine arts scene and the Tezos community. It's like a physical and virtual community. So what advice can you share for artists looking for a more hybrid career? Brilliant. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad to hear that. I've received a lot of feedback from Mexico in the past coming months after a few NFT participation events there. I think if I understand the question accurately, insofar as hybrid being partially physical and partially digital, I'm not an expert in the Mexican physical art scene. I would likely suggest that, very much like other continents and other areas in the world, the art scene can operate very differently than it does in London, where it does in or even the United States and Western Europe. But from my experience within my geography, I would suggest that a hybrid career always involves being active in either one of those spheres, right? So if you want to be a digital creator and really focus on that part of your career, I would suggest that either yourself or through an agent, because we're seeing more and more agents pop up as well who are happy to kind of facilitate this management, is really activity, making sure that you're present, you show up for your community, for your collectors, for other creators that are inspired by you. And that's part of the journey. And equally, I mean, this kind of goes back to the answer that I gave the young artist yesterday at the talk that I was at in London, which is, if you really want your artwork to be on the walls of the gallery, or even better, walls on the walls of a collector's house, you kind of have to show up. You have to make sure that your presence is known in the community that you want to be involved in. And if you're a photographer, go to photography private views. If you're a sculptor, show up at the Summer Royal College of Art show when there's a sculpture section. It doesn't have to be the traditional and I would argue physical art world as it stands today is a very, very tough nut to crack. but I've seen huge success and huge recognition when it comes to the people that do engage and do really come to those events and celebrate and make things that are in response to artwork that people are recognizing and are including in their dialogues. I've seen some fantastic results, not less. I mean, recently in London, we had the opening of the British Centre for Photography, which was born out of a private collection of a gallerist and a collector who engaged in a community with British photographers. And they were otherwise fairly alienated on an institutional view. And because they kept showing up to the table, they kept making work together, they kept in touch, suddenly this entire new institution has popped up and has sanctified all of that work. And it takes a long time. It takes longer than it might in Web3. But it operates in a very similar way.
Thank you.
Yes, Ryan, I agree with
Of course, our regular visitor and listener, Ryan. First step to anything is just show up. Good advice. Thank you, Ryan. Hope to meet you soon. So we're almost there. Thank you, Valerie, again for attending our webinar. And we really believe and rely on your expertise during the mentorship process of the upcoming Fuelarts and Tezos accelerator for the 10 lucky art and tech startups throughout the next 12 weeks. And next week, we'll be waiting for one of your colleagues from the Tezos ecosystem.
Thank you so much for welcoming me. It's been a thrilling conversation. I really, really appreciate it. And to everyone who's logging in or who may or may not have been part of that selection process, I think, again, going back to how the Tezos ecosystem works, I ask, come, you're welcome. I mean, there's so much to learn in whatever way possible or whatever way you see fit. So I think we can... absolutely, I think you should feel welcome within that, no matter what comes from the startups or individual seminars. The Tezos ecosystem is here to stay, and it's here to nurture art and technology.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you for being here today with us.
You're most welcome. Take care, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
You too. Bye.